The road to Cold Creek wasn't on most maps anymore. If you followed Highway 212 north out of Livingston, it began to twist and rise through the Absaroka Range, each mile climbing higher into the mist. The pavement cracked in places, old snow packed into the brakes like white scars. Guardrails disappeared one by one, and the trees thickened until the forest pressed so close I could feel it breathing against the glass. I'd been driving for hours without passing another car. Just me, the hum of the engine, and the cold gray sweep of mountains ahead. That kind of silence gets inside you after a while. It amplifies thoughts you've been trying not to hear. 4 years on the road had taught me that you don't really leave your past behind. You just learn to drive fast enough that it stops catching up. Or you hope it does. By the time I saw the crooked wooden sign, Cold Creek, Pop 812, the sun was a pale disk bleeding through cloud. The valley opened suddenly, and the town appeared like something half-remembered from a dream. A narrow main street, sloping roofs, chimneys exhaling thin trails of smoke. Snow crusted the edges of the creek that gave the place its name, a dark ribbon cutting through the center. It looked quiet, too quiet maybe. I pulled over in front of the Creekside Diner, the only building with its lights still on. The open sign buzzed faintly in the window, a dull red glow swallowed by fog. The bell above the door gave a tired jingle as I stepped inside. Warm air and the smell of coffee hit me. I hadn't realized how cold I was until then. "New face," said the waitress, setting a chipped mug in front of me before I even asked. The name tag pinned to her uniform read, Lucy. She had brown hair pulled into a messy knot and eyes that looked like they'd seen too many winters. "Passing through?" "Starting work here," I said, wrapping my hands around the mug. "School district hired me on. Bus driver." She froze for a second, spoon hovering over the sugar jar. "We still got school kids?" she muttered. Then she smiled too brightly, like she was trying to make it sound like a joke. "Guess we do. Been a quiet season. Roads freeze early up the ridge." "What ridge?" I asked. She nodded toward the fog pressing against the diner's north window. Beyond the glass, the valley narrowed into a line of dark pines climbing the hills. "Old Route 47, she said. "Don't drive it unless you have to." "Bad road?" "Bad luck," she said. "Landslide took half of it, and the old school with it. Folks don't go up there anymore." I didn't push it, but her tone stayed with me long after I left. The Cold Creek School District garage sat a mile out of town, next to a grain silo and what looked like an abandoned sawmill. The building itself was a hulking metal hangar, yellow paint faded to the color of bone. Inside, the air smelled like diesel, oil, and something faintly metallic. A single desk lamp glowed in the corner, illuminating stacks of logs and maps. The woman behind the desk didn't look up when I walked in. "You're Harlow?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Jack Harlow, from Livingston." "June Miller," she said. "Dispatch, paperwork, whatever needs doing. You ever handled mountain routes? Drove freight trucks through, Bozeman passes a few winters back. Then you'll manage fine." She slid a clipboard across the desk. "Route 12's yours." The paper looked normal, except for a faint erasure mark at the bottom, like someone had written another number and scrubbed it out. I squinted. "This one says 47? Her hand came down quick, covering it. "Old route. Don't worry about that. Bus got decommissioned." She stood, grabbed her keys and motioned for me to follow her out into the garage. 5 buses sat lined up like sleeping giants, paint dulled to mustard. The last one was pushed into the far corner, half swallowed by shadows. Even from a distance I could make out the faint outline of a number under layers of grime, 47. The windows were fogged from the inside, as if someone had been sitting there breathing for a long time. "That one's retired," June said quickly. "Engine shot." But I could smell something faint, unmistakable, diesel exhaust. Fresh. Cold Creek Elementary stood on the South Hill, a low brick building that looked newer than everything else around it. A fresh coat of red paint tried to hide the age beneath. The principal, Ed Morris, met me at the door. He was a big man with a weathered face, the kind of man who'd seen more winters than he'd care to count. "Glad to have you aboard, Mr. Harlow," he said, shaking my hand. Hard to keep drivers up here. Roads can be unpredictable. I don't mind the cold, I said. It's not the cold, he said, then smiled to soften it. You'll get used to the kids. Not many of them left. Families moved after the old school went down. That was 20 years ago. What happened? I asked. He sighed. Storm rolled through one night. Mountain gave way, buried half the road and most of the old school building. Some folks still think, well, that the school bus never made it out before it happened. But you know how small towns love their stories. I nodded, pretending I did. But something about the way he said stories made me think he believed them more than he wanted to admit. I rented a small cabin 2 miles outside town, right by the creek. It was an old hunting shack someone had converted into a one-room rental. The porch leaned like it was tired of standing, and the floorboards groaned every time I moved. But it was quiet. At night, fog gathered along the creek bed, thick enough to swallow sound. I'd sit by the window, coffee mug in hand, and watch it roll past the trees like slow smoke. Sometimes I saw headlights from trucks winding down the opposite ridge, only they never seemed to move in the same direction twice. The silence here was different. Not peaceful, more like the world was holding its breath. I kept Sarah's picture by the bed, a smiling face, caught mid-laugh, sunlight tangled in her hair. 4 years since she was gone, and still I couldn't bring myself to take the photo out of its cracked frame. The mountains didn't care about loss, they just swallowed it whole. Route 12 was uneventful at first. Farmhouses, ranches, snow fences stretching across empty fields. The kids were polite, quiet, a little too quiet if I'm honest. They'd step on, nod, and sit without a word. By the third morning, I had every stop memorized. The rhythm helped, the job, the routine. It gave me structure, something steady. At the diner, I ran into Deputy Roy Caldwell. He was the kind of man who looked built out of the same wood as the mountains, solid, unshakable. You're the new driver, he said, offering a hand. Good to see someone taking the wheel again. Again? I asked. He hesitated. We've had turnover. Folks don't like the routes up north. Fog's unpredictable. Everyone keeps saying that. Because it's true, he said. You think you're on one road, then the fog rolls in, and the road ain't there anymore. He smiled like it was a joke, but his eyes didn't. That night, I dreamt I was driving a different bus. Not my Route 12-1, a much older model. The dashboard was full of unfamiliar switches, the windows filmed with frost from the inside. Children sat perfectly still in the seats, faces turned toward me. I couldn't see their features, just shapes in the fog. A voice came through the intercom. A woman's voice. Calm, steady. Keep to the route, Jack. Don't look back. When I turned toward the mirror, my reflection wasn't there. I woke up drenched in sweat. The air smelled faintly of exhaust, and for a second, I could have sworn I heard the faint hiss of a bus door closing outside my cabin. Next morning, the depot was dark when I arrived. June's office light glowed dimly through the window, but she wasn't there. On her desk sat a single envelope, sealed, with my name typed neatly across the front. The paper was slightly singed along the edge, as if it had been too close to heat. I tore it open. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, yellowed, creased. Rules for Route 47. 1. Begin before 6:13 a.m. 2. Do not speak their names. 3. Do not check the mirror between stops. 4. Answer questions with not yet. 5. Keep headlights dim. 6. No music. 7. Do not watch them leave. JM. I stared at it for a long time, my coffee going cold in my hand. Somewhere deeper in the garage, something clicked, a sound like an ignition turning over. The air vibrated, faint but unmistakable. When I looked toward the back of the depot, the row of buses sat in silence, all except one. Bus EE-47's taillights glowed faintly red through the haze, and a thin line of exhaust curled upward into the cold morning air. I stayed in the garage longer than I had intended. Something about Bus 47 had a weight to it, a presence I couldn't name. The faint hiss from its tailpipe was almost comforting, and yet entirely wrong. "June?" I called again. My voice sounded strange against the steel walls, echoing like I wasn't alone. No answer. I moved closer to the bus, boots crunching over the layer of dust and grit that covered the floor. I pressed my palm against the hood, expecting the cold metal, but it felt older, heavier, like the years had pressed into it, leaving something inside waiting. Yet the hiss continued, soft, rhythmic. I circled to the driver's side and peered through the grime-smeared windows, rows of empty seats, silent and still. But I thought I saw movement in the reflection of the mirror, a quick flicker, a shadow crossing from one row to the next. I blinked, and it was gone. I forced myself to step back. It had to be my imagination. New town, new job, fog in the valley. It was always fog. Still, I didn't leave the bus behind. I couldn't. It demanded attention in a way no ordinary machine could. The next morning, fog clung to the valley like a living thing. Kids waited at their stops, bundled and half awake, faces glowing faintly from the screens of their phones. They didn't wave, didn't shout, just climbed aboard quietly, nodding at me with blank expressions. I told myself routine was everything. Routine meant control. June appeared halfway through my run, waving from the cab of her truck, cigarette dangling, clipboard in hand. The smile she gave me didn't quite reach her eyes. "Smooth run?" she asked. "Fine," I said. "Bus handled good. Good. Tomorrow we might shift you to Route 19. Mrs. Keen's out." I hesitated. "You ever hear anything about that bus in the back?" She stiffened. "Which one?" 47. June's eyes sharpened. She studied me for a long moment. Then she said, "Don't poke around that one, Jack. There are things best left alone." I smiled, forced. "Just making conversation." Her gaze lingered. Cold Creek doesn't do well with conversation. That evening I walked into town for dinner. The diner was almost empty. Lucy behind the counter, an old man with a parka nursing soup. "You're the new driver," the man said without looking up. His voice was gravel, slow and deliberate. "That's right," I said. He stirred his soup. "Used to drive myself long ago." Lucy gave him a warning glance. "Don't start, Walt," but he ignored her. "Stay off the Ridge Road." "Yeah," I said. "That's the plan." He looked me in the eye, pale, unblinking. They always say that at first. Then he returned to his soup. Walking back to the cabin, the fog had thickened. Street lights, dim as they were, cast pale cones through the mist. The silence was absolute, not peaceful, expectant, like the town itself was waiting for something. Halfway home, I thought I saw headlights, two small distant points of red cutting through the fog, slow, steady. Then they vanished. No sound of tires, no engine hum, just gone. When I turned the corner, the street was empty. The next morning, I arrived at the depot before anyone else. The door was locked. I lingered, watching the fog snake around the edges of the building, curling through cracks and beneath doors. Then, like an idiot, I went to the mailbox, pulled out the spare key and let myself in. The air was stale, heavy with oil and dust. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly, filling the silence. On June's desk sat something new, a small, leather-bound notebook, unmarked except for the faint initials JM pressed into the cover. I shouldn't have touched it, but I did. Most pages were blank. A few at the beginning held scrawled notes. March 2nd, fog rolled in early. Bus 47 still running, kids won't speak. March 6th, heard singing from the ridge after dark. No school that day, no one else on the road. March 9th, he saw them, said they looked the same as before, told him not to look back. The last page, 2 words, jagged in thick black ink. Not yet. I felt the air shift, a soft click, metallic, like a key turning. I froze. My heart thumped in my chest. I turned slowly toward the far end of the garage. Bus 47 sat where it had always been, silent, still, but the fog from outside was creeping along the floor toward the doors. And there, faint in the dim light, were footprints in the dust. Small, bare feet, leading from the driver's side door toward the exit. I didn't tell June about the journal. I told myself it wasn't my business. But that night back at the cabin, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The initials, the rules, the smell of diesel, the small footprints. I poured a drink and sat by the window. Fog rolled through the pines, thick and slow. The world outside was half hidden, a place where the ordinary could bend into the strange without warning. And then I saw them. 2 red lights across the creek, hovering low, steady, like eyes watching me. I blinked. Gone. I couldn't shake the feeling that the fog had been waiting for me. That it wasn't just fog at all. And deep down, I knew I was going to have to drive Route 47. I woke before dawn as usual. The fog was already thick, curling across the frozen creek like smoke from some impossible fire. I poured coffee into a chipped mug and held it with both hands, staring out the window at the valley. The mist was moving in unnatural ways, writhing over the ridges, creeping down the slopes as though it had its own purpose. Bus 47 was waiting in the depot, exactly where it had always been. I knew it would be. Some part of me had been dreading this moment since I first read the rules. My fingers itched toward the key, even as a voice in the back of my mind whispered warnings I didn't want to hear. I slid into the driver's seat. The dashboard felt cold under my hands, the leather cracked and brittle like skin. I placed the key in the ignition, and the engine groaned awake. The sound wasn't mechanical, it was alive. It vibrated through the floor, into my bones, and I swear I could feel the bus exhale. The exhaust curled from the tailpipe in a thin ribbon that seemed almost to sway in the air as if it were breathing too. I remembered the rules, reciting them in a low, steady murmur. Begin before 6:13 a.m. Do not speak their names. Do not check the mirror between stops. Answer questions with not yet. Keep headlights dim. No music. Do not watch them leave. The first stop. The first few stops were deceptively normal. Kids climbed aboard, bundled in coats and scarves, their small, pale hands gripping the railings. Their faces were almost translucent in the dim early light. They nodded at me silently, like students in some unspoken ritual. I kept my hands tight on the wheel, repeating the rules to myself like a mantra. I didn't glance at the mirrors, I didn't speak their names, but every time one of them moved, I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. Seat 5, middle row, was occupied by a boy whose hair fell in thick shadows across his face. When he looked up, his eyes reflected nothing. I asked his name, no response, only a faint, chilling smile. I felt my throat go dry. Do not speak their names, I whispered. I obeyed, and then I realized something. The smiles weren't normal. They weren't friendly. They were anticipatory, waiting. The fog thickens. By the time I reached the northern ridge, the fog had swallowed the road entirely. Headlights dimmed, obeying the rules, barely cut through the white nothingness. The road twisted in ways I didn't remember from the map. Trees loomed too close, gnarled branches scraping against the bus like fingernails. Every mile felt like it stretched farther than it should. I dared not glance at the mirrors, but I felt the presence behind me. Something followed, something that mirrored the bus, larger in its silence, darker than the pre-dawn mist. My pulse raced. The children remained quiet, but the air around them seemed to hum with tension, as if their silence carried weight I could feel pressing against my chest. The children's presence. Halfway up the ridge, I risked a glance at the aisle, not at the mirrors, never at the mirrors. Every child was staring directly at me now. Empty-eyed, motionless, their pale faces almost blending into the fog outside the windows. And then the boy in seat 5 raised his hand, slowly, deliberately. The movement was too precise, too controlled, like he was puppeted by some unseen force. What do you want? I asked, my voice trembling. His lips moved. I couldn't hear the words at first. Then it hit me, faint, soft, echoing inside my own head. Not yet. I froze. It wasn't my voice. It wasn't his. It was both. Somewhere in the middle. I swallowed hard and spoke aloud, shaking. Not yet. The boy's hand fell, but his eyes didn't leave mine. I could feel them piercing into me, into the part of me I tried to keep buried. And then the others, every child, turned their heads slightly in unison, following him. This isn't normal. The road warps. Then the impossible happened. The road twisted around a bend I didn't remember, cutting through the fog like it had never existed. The guardrails vanished. Trees leaned inward unnaturally, scraping the roof of the bus with sharp fingernail sounds. The gravel crunched beneath the tires, but it wasn't just gravel. I could feel it shifting, as if the road itself were alive, waiting, reshaping itself beneath me. I couldn't tell how far I'd gone or if I was even on the map anymore. Every landmark, boulders, fences, a fallen tree, had disappeared or rearranged itself. Route 47 was alive, and it had me, the mirror bus. Out of the fog, I thought I saw headlights. Another bus, same size, same shape, darker somehow. It followed us, slow, silent. Always at a distance. I didn't look directly, not once, not in the mirrors, but I could feel it there, following, watching, waiting. Every instinct screamed to stop, to turn, to run. But the rules were clear. Begin before 6:13. Do not break the rules. The fog pressed closer, and the children's silent energy felt heavier, more insistent, whispers and shadows. A sound reached me then, first faint, then louder, impossible. A whisper, a voice I knew. Jack. My stomach dropped. It was Sarah. I knew it. Her voice, sweet and distant, yet unmistakable. My breath hitched. 4 years since the accident. 4 years since I'd stopped hearing her. Jack. I spun in my seat, fog everywhere, no sign of her, only mist curling through the windows like fingers. The children remained still, unblinking, staring at me with their hollow faces. I remembered the rule, do not look back. I pressed the accelerator lightly, tires crunching the warped gravel. The bus shivered under me. The mirror bus stayed behind, unmoving in the fog, a shadow among shadows. Then I heard it, laughter. Children laughing, not from inside the bus, from outside, from every direction at once, high-pitched, chaotic, insane. My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles turned white. The air inside the bus grew icy. Breath condensed in front of me. The children were silent again, but their eyes followed me, always watching, always knowing. And then I realized I had no idea how to return. Route 47 had no exit. It didn't follow maps. It didn't care about me. I was trapped, and it was only the beginning. The fog didn't lift, not a bit. It pressed against the bus like cold hands, curling around the tires, pooling on the roof, dripping from the edges of the windshield. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles screamed. Each breath I drew seemed to solidify the mist into something heavier, darker, almost alive. I didn't know how long I had been driving. The sun was a pale disk behind the fog, hiding somewhere above, or maybe it had vanished entirely. Every tree along the ridge looked twisted, impossible, as if the forest itself had folded over the road. I tried to remember the rules. 7 rules, my only chance to survive. 1. Begin before 6:13 a.m. Done. Duh. Do not speak their names. Done, so far. 3. Do not check the mirror between stops. Never looked. 4. Answer questions with not yet. The boy asked, I obeyed. 5. Keep headlights dim. Dim, always dim. No music. Silence, oppressive silence. 7. Do not watch them leave. They hadn't left, or had they? Even following the rules, I felt the road bending beneath me, reshaping with every turn. Route 47 had a rhythm of its own, a slow pulse I could feel through the tires and the frame of the bus. Seat 5, the boy. He didn't move at first. Then slowly, deliberately, he leaned forward. His face was close to mine, pale and sharp, eyes reflecting the dim headlights. Not yet, I whispered automatically. He tilted his head, smiled, and then vanished. I froze. My eyes darted down the aisle. Empty seats. No one. Not even a shadow. I forced myself to breathe. Imagination, fog, exhaustion. Then I heard the scratching from the ceiling, small desperate fingernails clawing against the metal. The bus shivered. I slammed my hands against the wheel. The children didn't flinch, didn't blink. The fog outside thickened, so dense the headlights could barely reach the road. I knew, in my gut, that we weren't just on a road anymore. The road was inside something else, something alive, and it had claimed us. I saw it again, the shadow bus. Darker this time, closer, almost touching the fog. Its headlights glowed red like eyes, but the outline was wrong, skewed, impossible angles. It moved with a silence that made my ears ring. I wanted to swerve, to run, to do anything, but the rules held me. I couldn't break them. My hands stayed tight on the wheel, muscles screaming, sweat stinging my eyes. And then the whispers started. From the bus, from the fog, from the children. Jack, Jack, not yet. They weren't speaking. They were in my head, in my chest, behind my eyes. The bus was breathing with them, pulsing, alive. The road split suddenly. Two paths appeared in the fog. Neither looked right, both impossible. Trees leaned over one route, branches forming shapes that seemed almost human. The other road disappeared into blackness so deep it swallowed the headlights. I wanted to stop, to turn back, but I remembered the rules. Begin before 6:13. Do not break the rules. The children began to move, slowly, perfectly synchronized, down the aisle. Their faces, still pale, reflected something worse than emptiness, hunger, waiting, judgment. The bus shuddered, brakes screeching as I struggled to hold control. The steering wheel felt like it was alive, twisting in my hands, forcing me toward the darker path. I couldn't stop. Route 47 had chosen me. In a moment of panic, I glanced to the rearview mirror. Immediate regret. A wave of cold slammed into me, so intense it took my breath away. My vision blurred. The children's faces changed. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the seats. Their eyes were no longer human. Black voids dripping with something dark, reflecting the red glow of the mirror bus. The bus itself seemed to groan, metal creaking as though in pain. I remembered the rule, do not check the mirror between stops. I had broken it. I felt it, deep in my bones. The road beneath me twisted violently, the tires skidding on gravel that had become more like wet clay. The whispers rose, louder, angrier, a chorus of voices that had no mouths. Jack, Jack, you shouldn't have. I slammed my foot on the accelerator. The fog thickened, forming shapes outside the windows, hands reaching, faces pressed to the glass, screaming silently. One by one, the children began to chant softly, not aloud, but in my head. Names I had never heard, words I did not understand, all forming an impossible pattern. I realized then that the children weren't just passengers. They were the road keepers, guardians, prisoners, and I had entered their domain. I repeated the rules aloud, shaking. Not yet, not yet, not yet. The boy in seat 5 appeared at the front, staring straight at me. His smile was wide now, grotesque, teeth sharp, impossibly long. The bus groaned again. Lights flickered. The mirror bus accelerated beside us, impossible speed, no sound except the whispering fog. I tried to steer toward one path, but the road twisted like a living snake. Each turn I took brought me to the same fork, the same impossible trees, the same void. The bus was a cage. Route 47 was a trap. And the children, they knew I was scared. They thrived on it. Their eyes bore into me. I could feel every heartbeat, every moment of doubt and terror. The whispers became screams inside my skull. I realized something chilling. The rules weren't just guidelines. They were a lifeline. Break them, and Route 47 wouldn't just twist reality. It would consume me entirely. I clutched the wheel, knees shaking, sweat freezing on my skin. My breath turned to mist in the frigid bus air. Somewhere outside I heard laughter, high-pitched, terrible, unhuman. And then, softer, Sarah's voice again. "Jack, not yet." The bus lurched forward, tires skidding over a road that had become something else entirely. Alive, hungry, infinite. And I understood in that moment. I had no idea if I would ever leave Route 47. I don't remember when it became impossible to tell inside from outside, day from night. Fog pressed in, thick and living, and the bus became more than steel and seats. It became a cage, a creature, a predator that fed on every mistake, every fear. Seat 5 moved again. The boy, or whatever he was, stood in the aisle, impossibly tall, smiling wide, teeth glinting like sharpened knives in the dim headlights. The other children followed, moving like a single organism, bodies twisting, elongating, crawling along seats and windows like living shadows. I tried to recite the rules aloud. Not yet, not yet, not yet. It wasn't enough. I glanced at the rearview mirror. A mistake. Immediately, ice shot through my veins. My chest tightened as if someone had crushed it with a steel vise. The children's faces warped, their black void eyes expanding, consuming the aisle in darkness. The mirror bus surged forward, closer, almost touching the fogged edges of my headlights. The bus shuddered violently. Seats twisted under my weight. Floorboards groaned like bone breaking. The whispers became screams inside my skull. "Jack, Jack, you shouldn't have, not yet." I slammed the accelerator. Gravel exploded under the tires, but the road had become something else. The asphalt rippled like liquid. Shadows rose from the fog, pressing against the bus, hands clawing, faces forming and disappearing in the mist. One child, no, not a child anymore, climbed onto the dashboard. I froze. Its tiny hands gripped the wheel. I could feel it pressing, bending reality, forcing the bus to swerve. "Not yet," I screamed, repeating the rule like a prayer. It laughed, a sound no human could produce. The fog swirled violently outside. Trees bent unnaturally over the road, limbs scraping the roof. The air inside the bus froze. My breath condensed. Every child began chanting softly. Names I didn't know, words I didn't understand. But I felt them pierce my mind, clawing, probing, testing my fear. I realized these weren't children. They were the road. They were Route 47 incarnate, and I was trapped inside its body. I don't remember how long I drove. Minutes, hours, days. The road bent and twisted, the fog thickening until nothing existed but my bus, the mirror bus, and the chanting children. My reflection appeared in every window, hollow-eyed, pale, trembling. Sometimes Sarah's face appeared behind me in the mirror, smiling, whispering not yet. I tried to speak, to beg, to reason. My voice became my own tormentor, echoing back at me, layered, distorted, repeating every word I said. The rules, they became alive. Breaking one brought immediate punishment. Glancing at the mirror, shouting, hesitating. Each one made the bus itself lurch, the fog tighten, the children's eyes pierced deeper into my mind. Through the chaos, fragments of memory or vision flashed before me. A long ago accident, a bus crash on this very ridge, children lost, townspeople whispering in fear. June Miller, a figure in black, scribbling the rules, binding the road, binding the spirits, creating a trap to contain the children's rage. And now, I was the latest pawn. The children moved closer. One of them, seat 5, reached for the windshield. A tiny hand pressed against the glass, but the glass warped, bending inward, the shape impossibly following the outline of the hand, as if the bus itself obeyed the child. I screamed. The bus lurched violently again. Steering resisted me, tires skidding over a road that had become teeth and bone. The children were no longer quiet passengers. They whispered threats, promises, laughing, screaming, growing larger, crawling across the ceiling, down the aisles, over seats. The mirror bus hovered close, shadowing me perfectly. I could see the reflection of my own fear in its shape. Every twitch of the wheel, every tremor, it mirrored with precision, an echo of terror made flesh. I understood something horrifying. Route 47 didn't want me to survive. The rules weren't suggestions, they were contracts. Broken, They exacted punishment immediately. I had reached the point where movement was meaningless. Forward or backward, left or right, it all led to the same impossibility. The road was infinite, the fog sentient, the bus a cage, the children predators. I realized the last rule: do not watch them leave. I had to obey. If I even glanced at them, if I tried to save myself, the bus would devour me, the fog would consume me, the children would enter my mind and stay forever. I gripped the wheel tighter. My knuckles cracked. The bus vibrated. The fog thickened. The mirror bus loomed at my side, glowing red, perfect, patient, eternal. I whispered the mantra one last time. Not yet, not yet, not yet. And in that moment, I understood the cruel truth of Route 47. There was no exit. Not until the road decided I was ready, and it had all the time in the world. I don't know how long I had been trapped. Minutes, hours, days. The fog was a living entity now, curling into the bus vents, pressing against my chest, slipping under the doors. The bus groaned under its own weight, as though alive, shifting and twisting as if sensing my fear. The children were no longer sitting quietly. They moved through the bus like smoke given form. Shadows stretched and twisted across the seats, walls, and ceiling, reaching for me. Their eyes, black, infinite, pierced straight into my mind. I felt memories I didn't want to recall stirring in their gaze. I realized the rules were no longer guidelines. They were life or death mandates, enforced immediately. Rule 1, begin before 6:13. I had obeyed this rule earlier, but now the fog pressed against the bus like an unspoken punishment. Time itself felt warped. Every second stretched into minutes, every breath a battle. I realized that breaking the timing, even subtly, caused the bus to shudder violently, as if punishing me for imperfection. The road ahead twisted in impossible angles. Gravel became bone, and asphalt became sinew. Trees pressed inward, scraping the bus roof like claws. I thought about turning back, but the rule forbade it. I was trapped. Rule 2, do not speak their names. The children began whispering my name, not audibly, but in my head. Every syllable vibrated inside my skull. Jack, Jack, Jack. I clenched my teeth and repeated the mantra, not yet, not yet. Seat 5 leaned down toward me. Its grin widened grotesquely, teeth sharp, eyes black, hands stretching impossibly long. I felt a pull, like gravity reversed, dragging my consciousness toward it. I realized if I spoke their names, even accidentally, they would enter me completely. My mind, my soul, consumed. Rule 3, do not check the mirror between stops. I had broken this rule once. The punishment was searing and immediate. Pain, fear, and reality itself bending around me. Now, even without glancing, I could sense the mirror bus. It hovered alongside, red headlights like predatory eyes. Every movement I made, it mirrored perfectly. The bus shuddered violently as if it had a pulse of its own. I gripped the wheel tighter. The tires slipped on a road that had become something alive. Gravel crunched, then split, revealing black shapes beneath, writhing, clawing upward. One of them, seat 5, climbed onto the dashboard. Tiny hands pressed against the wheel, bending it with impossible force. The bus swerved sharply, tires skidding. I shouted, "Not yet!" The child laughed. Not a human laugh, but a chorus of echoes layered together, high-pitched, low, shrill, resonant. The other children began chanting, not aloud, but inside my skull. Not yet, not yet, not yet. Their voices became one, unrelenting. The bus shifted, floors tilting, walls bending, ceiling pressing down like a trap. I realized the bus itself had become a predator, guided by their will. Rule 4, answer questions with not yet. A voice, faint, almost a whisper. Jack, are you ready? I wanted to scream, to say yes, to escape, but the rule forced my lips. Not yet. The bus lurched violently, as though punishing me for hesitation. The children's eyes narrowed, their grins widened. I realized the rule was not for my convenience. It was for my survival. Break it, and death would come swiftly, in a way that could not be imagined. Rule 5, keep headlights dim. The fog twisted around every light. Brighter beams would have been suicidal. Dim lights barely cut through the mist, revealing shadows that were not shadows. Faces, hands, branches that moved like they were alive, reaching, grasping. I realized too late that the fog could sense light and presence. Dim lights meant survival. Bright lights meant invitation. Rule 6, no music. I had tried to play a song once, in the early hours before the full terror had begun. The sound had been swallowed immediately, replaced with screams, thousands of layered voices screaming. The bus shuddered. The mirror bus advanced. I never tried it again. Silence was safety, though it became a torture of its own. Every tiny sound magnified into horror. Rule 7, do not watch them leave. This one became the cruelest. I dared not glance at the children when they moved, when they climbed the ceiling, when they approached the bus doors. Watching them leave, or attempt to leave, invited catastrophe. I understood now. They were tied to the road, to the bus, to the fog. One child appeared in front of me, impossibly stretching from seat to dashboard. I dared not blink. I dared not move. And yet I could feel the pull, the temptation, the instinct to see what would happen. I didn't look, not yet. In the chaos, fragments of vision pierced my terror. Memories, or maybe visions planted by the bus itself. A long-ago accident. Children trapped in a crash on this ridge. Townspeople whispering secrets. June Miller writing the 7 rules, binding the children's spirits to the road, to the bus. Route 47 became a liminal trap, a place between life and death, reality and nightmare. I understood, in a horrifying clarity, the bus and the children were Route 47 incarnate. The rules weren't guidelines, they were contracts. Survival depended on total obedience. Failure meant being consumed entirely, mind, body, and soul. The bus lurched. Tires skidded. Trees leaned inward. Shadows pressed against the windows. I felt the fog inside my chest, inside my throat, inside my mind. The children began laughing, climbing, whispering, chanting. The mirror bus mirrored every movement, keeping perfect rhythm. A predator stalking its prey. I realized I was nothing, a passenger, a pawn, and the road would not release me. I repeated the mantra one last time, not yet, not yet, not yet. The fog pulsed, the children's eyes glowed, the mirror bus accelerated. And I understood I would never leave Route 47 unless the road chose to let me go. And right now, it had not. The fog was no longer fog. It had become a living, breathing entity, pressing against the bus, curling into every crevice, invading every inch of my body. Every breath I drew was cold and thick, and it felt like it was crawling under my skin, freezing my blood. Bus 47 groaned like a beast, vibrating beneath me, its tires biting into a road that had become sinew and bone. The children were everywhere now, climbing the ceiling, stretching along the walls, crawling along the windows. Their black, endless eyes bored into my mind, and I could feel their hunger, their intelligence, their malicious intent. I understood finally that the 7 rules weren't guidelines. They were laws of survival enforced by the bus and its inhabitants. Seat 5 moved onto the dashboard. Its tiny hands, impossibly long and skeletal, clutched the wheel. The bus swerved violently, tires skidding across the warped road. The other children began chanting. Not aloud, but inside my head. Not yet, not yet, not yet. I slammed my hands down on the wheel, shouting the words aloud. Not yet, not yet. The bus lurched violently. Metal screeched. The mirror bus emerged from the fog like a predator, red headlights piercing the dimness. A branch, or something alive, scraped along the roof. A window cracked. I felt a hand, cold and wet, brush against my shoulder, but no one was there. Only fog, only shadows, only the children. The road beneath me twisted and bent like it had a pulse. Gravel became writhing shapes, bones and sinew, reaching upward. Every turn, every movement, the road shifted. I realized I was not driving. The road was moving me. The bus was a cage and a predator. I tried to scream, but the sound echoed back in layers, distorted, multiplied. My own voice was tormenting me. Trees leaned inward, scratching the sides of the bus. Fog coiled around the headlights, swallowing the dim beams. Shapes appeared, hands, faces, mouths, screaming silently. I was trapped in a living nightmare, an inescapable labyrinth of mist and shadow. Through the chaos, fragments of vision flashed in my mind. A crash, years ago. Children lost on this ridge, townspeople whispering in fear. June Miller writing rules, scribbling them in a journal, binding the spirits of the children to Route 47. She had turned the road into a liminal trap, a prison for the lost, the forgotten, and the angry. The children weren't alive. Not really. They were spirits bound to the road, to the bus, to the rules. They were guardians of Route 47, and breaking the rules meant immediate punishment, and I had already broken some. The mirror bus, perfect and dark, glided beside me, red headlights blazing. It wasn't just following, it was hunting. Every twitch of the wheel, every tremble of fear, it mirrored perfectly. I could feel its intent. It wanted me trapped. The children moved faster, climbing down from the ceiling, stretching along the aisles. Seat 5 grinned wider than should have been possible. Its voice, or something like a voice, echoed in my skull. Not yet. The bus lurched again. Gravel became fingers, branches became skeletal arms, the fog became a wall pressing inward, ready to crush me. I realized there was one chance, one risk, one path that might lead out. The road ahead split into a narrow, twisting pass. It looked impossible, nearly vertical, flanked by trees that seemed alive. I pressed the accelerator, dim headlights cutting thin paths through the fog. The children shrieked in unison inside my head. The mirror bus accelerated alongside me, red eyes blazing. I swerved violently, following the narrow pass. The bus groaned as if in pain. Seat 5 lunged forward, hands stretching impossibly, trying to grab me, to pull me back. I shouted, "Not yet!" The bus tilted, tires skidding over gravel and bone. Branches ripped at the sides, scraping metal. The mirror bus vanished into the fog. I dared not look back. The children's voices faded, almost. I reached the top of the ridge. The fog thinned slightly. Trees bent back as if bowing in surrender. The road leveled, familiar gravel appearing beneath the tires. I didn't stop. I didn't breathe. I kept driving. For the first time, I felt hope. Even as I descended the other side of the ridge, I understood the cruelest truth. Route 47 was not gone, not broken, not escaped. It was waiting, watching, feeding. And the children, the mirror bus, the fog, the rules, they would all be there the next morning, the next trip, the next mistake. I survived, for now, but I knew in the pit of my stomach I would return, and next time, survival would be far from guaranteed. I woke before dawn again, drenched in sweat, hands trembling, muscles locked from the night's terror. Bus 47 waited for me, quiet, deceptively normal, but I knew better. I had survived once. That didn't mean I was free. Route 47 doesn't release its prey. The fog clung to the trees like living silk, curling and twisting along the road. Every mile I had driven yesterday felt both distant and immediate. The memory of the children, the mirror bus, the scraping branches, the impossible twisting road. It followed me like a shadow I could not shake. As I drove, something impossible happened. The road split, not into two paths, but into multiple versions of itself, each slightly different. Gravel, trees, fog, all repeated like overlapping realities. I could see faint reflections of myself in the fog ahead, driving another bus, panicked, screaming, failing. Each version ended the same, swallowed by fog, consumed by the children, trapped forever. I realized Route 47 wasn't just a road, it was a loop, a trap, a sentient prison that rewrote itself with every trip. Every mistake created another version of me, another failed passenger, another echo of terror. The children no longer followed predictable patterns. Seat 5 appeared on the ceiling, then on the dashboard, then, somehow, behind me. Their movements defied physics. They whispered in voices that overlapped mine that overlapped theirs, creating a chorus of madness. Not yet, not yet, not yet. One child's mouth stretched impossibly, singing a hollow, distorted version of my own memories. Every laugh, every shriek, felt like it was tearing my mind apart. The rules, the 7 rules, felt thinner now, like fragile threads barely holding me together. Every broken rule summoned immediate punishment, windows cracking with impossible force, the bus twisting violently, fog forming hands that clawed at my body from every direction. Fragments of memory, or vision, flashed. June Miller, years ago, scribbling in her journal by candlelight. She was not just a teacher, not just a writer of rules. She was the architect of Route 47's curse. The children, the spirits bound to the road, were lost souls from past accidents, bound to enforce the rules. Every driver who failed, every child who disappeared, became another layer in the road's sentience. I understood now. Route 47's purpose was not survival, it was eternal repetition. Each driver, each trip, each failed attempt fed the curse, strengthening the road, the fog, and the children. The road beneath me warped like liquid, trees bent in impossible directions, roots breaking through asphalt, grasping at the bus. The fog thickened, forming shapes, faces, hands, screaming mouths that moved independently of logic. The mirror bus reappeared, but this time, it wasn't just one. Multiple versions of it emerged from the fog, each perfectly mirroring a failed version of myself. They surrounded me. I was trapped in a circle of my own fear, each reflection screaming silently, each shadow mocking my attempts to survive. The children climbed the bus again. Seat 5's eyes glowed red. The others began to chant, faster, louder, inside my skull. Not yet, not yet, not yet. Desperation clawed at me. I remembered the thin hope from yesterday, the narrow pass at the ridge. I swerved toward it, tires skidding, fog thick and choking. The bus twisted violently under me. Branches ripped along the sides. Gravel became bone. Asphalt became sinew. The children lunged, shadows stretching impossibly long, hands reaching for me, teeth snapping near my ears. I shouted, "Not yet!" The mirror buses accelerated alongside me, but the fog shifted, giving a narrow opening. I drove faster than I had ever dared. Every heartbeat felt like a hammer striking metal. I made it through the pass. For a moment, the fog thinned. The road beneath me became gravel again. Trees bowed, shadows receded. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold the wheel. I was alive. For now, even as I descended the ridge, I realized Route 47 would always be waiting. Every trip I survived, every rule I followed, every near-death escape, it only fed the curse. The children, the mirror buses, the sentient road, the fog, they would all be there next time. And worse, every driver before me, trapped versions of myself, the echoes in the fog, they were all part of the loop. A never-ending cycle of terror, testing every rule, punishing every failure. I survived this trip. I may survive tomorrow. But Route 47 would never stop, and I would never truly leave. The fog was no longer a presence outside the bus. It was inside me, coiling in my lungs, crawling into my ears, pressing against my brain. My hands gripped the wheel until the skin tore. Every heartbeat echoed like a hammer against steel. Bus 47 had become something alive. It groaned, shuddered, twisted beneath me as though trying to throw me off. The road beneath me was no longer asphalt. Gravel, bone, sinew, branches, shadows. A living, writhing creature that obeyed no laws but its own. And the children, they were everywhere. Seat 5 first, perched impossibly tall on the dashboard, grinning wider than should have been possible. The others crawled along seats, ceiling, windows. Shadows stretched impossibly long, faces contorted in pain and hunger. Their black eyes pierced my soul. Flashes of memory, or visions, assaulted me. June Miller, decades ago, alone in her cabin, writing the 7 rules in a journal soaked in candle wax, her eyes darkened with obsession. She was not just a teacher. She was a sorceress, an architect of a curse so powerful it could trap not only the dead but the living in a perpetual nightmare. The children were her first victims, the lost souls from old accidents, bound to the road, bound to the rules, and each driver who failed, each passenger consumed, strengthened the curse. Route 47 wasn't just a road, it was an eternal loop, a prison, a predator. And I had entered it. The rules were no longer mere guidelines. They were lifelines and instruments of punishment, enforced with brutal immediacy. Glancing at the mirror brought excruciating pain, as though my skull were being split. Speaking their names caused the bus itself to twist violently, tires losing contact with the road. Hesitating, answering incorrectly, or showing fear summoned the children instantly, stretching across impossible distances, attacking. I realized every rule was a contract, every infraction a near certain death sentence. The mirror bus returned, not one but dozens emerging from the fog like shadows multiplied. Each reflected a failed version of me, screaming silently, eyes wide with terror. They surrounded me, pressing in, cutting off any escape. Seat 5 lunged, stretching impossibly across the aisle, its mouth opened wide, revealing darkness within. Another child climbed the ceiling, a third slid along the floor. Every direction I looked, every movement I made, was mirrored, anticipated, countered. The bus lurched violently. I slammed my foot to the accelerator, praying, hoping, screaming, not yet. The road itself fought me. Gravel became hands. Branches became skeletal arms, scraping the sides of the bus, clawing at tires, clawing at me. The fog pressed inward, thick and suffocating, shaping itself into screaming faces, mouths snapping at my head, eyes glowing red. Every heartbeat, every nerve, every sense was assaulted. The bus tilted, twisted, bounced across the living road. The mirror buses closed in. The children lunged. I realized then survival was impossible without breaking the rules, but breaking them would be suicide. Then I saw it, a narrow path through the fog, just wide enough for bus 47. A ridge, steep and jagged, lined with impossible bending trees. The mirror buses mirrored every movement. The children reached for me from every angle. I pressed the accelerator, dim headlights barely cutting through the fog. Shadows reached in, fingers scraping. Seat 5 lunged at the wheel. I shouted, "Not yet!" The bus tilted violently. Gravel exploded into bone-like shapes. Branches ripped along the sides. Tires lost traction. But I held on. I pushed forward. The mirror buses collided with the fog, vanishing in a wave of darkness. The children shrieked in unison, stretching impossibly. Voices inside my skull layered into a crescendo of terror. I swerved into the narrow pass. Trees bowed back, shadows receded, the fog thinned. For the first time, I saw a stretch of normal road ahead. Even as I descended the ridge, relief was fleeting. The fog receded only slightly. The road beneath me returned to gravel, but the knowledge remained. Route 47 was not gone. The curse was not broken. The children, the mirror buses, the sentient road, they were all waiting, patient, eternal. I survived, for now. I may survive tomorrow, but Route 47 does not forget. Route 47 does not forgive, and one day it will take me entirely. I gripped the wheel, hands bloody, knees shaking. The bus groaned beneath me. The fog shifted, the road pulsed like a heartbeat, and I knew the loop would continue, the rules would continue, and I would never truly escape. I knew the fog would be waiting. I knew the children, the mirror buses, the warped road, everything sentient on Route 47 would be ready. But I had a plan now, a fragile, desperate plan. For weeks I had survived by following the rules. I had repeated "not yet" 1,000 times in my head. I had endured the impossible physics, the twisting fog, the children's black, infinite eyes, and I had survived. But survival wasn't enough. The curse, I realized, wasn't just a threat to me. It was a prison. For the children, for the lost drivers before me, for every soul swallowed by the road. I gripped the wheel and whispered to myself, if I'm going to survive, I have to break it. I have to free them. The bus groaned as the fog thickened, curling into the vents and wrapping around the tires like coils of ice. The road became sinew, bone, and shadow, alive and writhing beneath me. Trees leaned inward, branches snapping and scraping metal, trying to crush the bus. Seat 5 appeared first, impossibly tall, grin wider than natural law should allow. The other children followed, crawling along the ceiling, sliding along the windows, stretching from floor to dashboard. Their black eyes bored into my soul, reading every thought, every fear, every doubt. Mirror buses appeared, dozens of them, surrounding me in a perfect circle. Each one reflected a failed version of me, screaming silently in a chorus of terror. I realized that every driver before me had become a piece of this cursed machine, trapped forever. It all came together. June Miller's journal, the whispers of the children, the shape of the road itself. The 7 rules weren't just guidelines. They bound the children to Route 47, binding the souls of the lost drivers as fuel for the curse. The curse was powered by fear, obedience, and failure. If I could bend the rules creatively, I could destabilize the loop, shatter the mirror buses, and free the trapped souls. I understood. Survival alone wouldn't work. I had to fight the rules, the bus, and the sentient road all at once. I recited the rules aloud, bending them to my advantage. 1. Begin before 6:13. I had, and that anchored me to the loop, giving leverage. 2. Do not speak their names. Instead, I whispered their shadows' forms, confusing the children. 3. Do not check the mirror between stops. I glanced briefly at reflections peripherally, disorienting the mirror buses. 4. Answer questions with not yet. I shouted it like a battle cry, asserting control over fear. 5. Keep headlights dim. Dim light revealed only fragments, keeping me partly hidden. 6. No music. Absolute silence amplified my senses, allowing me to anticipate attacks. 7. Do not watch them leave. I focused fully on the narrow path ahead, ignoring shadows behind. The rules became my weapons, my shield, my chance. Seat 5 lunged from the dashboard, impossibly tall. Others attacked from ceiling, walls, floor, stretching and contorting beyond reason. Fog twisted into screaming faces and snapping mouths. Branches clawed at metal. Gravel erupted into clawing hands. Mirror buses mirrored every movement. I realized the only way to break the curse was not just survival, but confrontation. I had to face the children directly, acknowledge their pain, and free them. I saw the ridge, the narrow pass that had saved me once before, but this time it was lined with impossibly bent trees and fog shaped into screaming humanoid forms. Mirror buses closed in from all sides. Children lunged from impossible angles. I pressed the accelerator. Dim headlights barely cut the fog. Seat 5 lunged again. I shouted, "Not yet!" The bus tilted violently. Gravel exploded beneath tires. Branches scraped along the sides. Mirror buses collided with fog and exploded into shards of shadow. I shouted into the fog, "I see you. I know what you are. You are not trapped forever. I release you." The children froze, their black eyes widening. Shadows recoiled. The mirror buses shook violently, flickering, then shattered like glass. The bus lurched on the edge of the ridge as the fog screamed and twisted in fury. I slammed the accelerator into the pass, following the narrow road. The sun broke through the mist, flooding light across twisted gravel and warped trees. The children's forms began to glow, turning from shadow into light. Seat 5 screamed one last time, a note of pain and relief, then dissipated. One by one, the other children's shadows brightened, glowing like fireflies before ascending into the sky, leaving nothing behind but faint warmth and silence. The fog lifted. The mirror buses vanished. The road beneath me returned to normal gravel. Trees straightened. Birds sang. I sat in the bus, hands shaking, chest heaving. The horror was gone. Route 47 had lost its power. The children, the trapped drivers, every soul swallowed by the curse, They were free. I drove through Cold Creek, Montana, past the ordinary roads, past the ordinary houses. Everything looked normal now, peaceful. The curse had ended, but the memory lingered. The fear, the terror, the black eyes, the mirror buses, they haunted me still. I had won. I had survived. I had broken the curse. And yet, Route 47 had been patient for decades. Who knew if some fragment of it might awaken again? For now, though, the sun was rising. The road was silent. And the souls, finally, were free.